Well, welcome Chloe and Carly to the Flower Podcast. So glad to have you today.
Thanks so much for having us. It's fun to be here.
I know. Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Welcome. Well, we always try to have different guests on. We always have wedding people on or farmers on. And I think it's really cool the way you have managed to embrace retail floristry to do kind of a little bit of all these things. And I really want to learn more about your business model and how you approach things. But before we get to that, I always love to hear the story. Like, how did you guys meet? How did you end up in the flower business? Have you always been flower children? The ultimate question. And so, yeah, let's hear more about you guys.
Cool. I'll share because I've been doing this for a little bit longer than Chloe, but
Yeah.
and then we'll get into Chloe. Yeah,
It sounds good. Let's go for
okay.
it.
So I started wedding planning here in Los Angeles in 2010, and in 2015 I had kind of wanted to grow my business, and I had an opportunity with a vendor that I'd been working with, a business called Primary Petals, and she approached me and said, "Hey, next year I'm not going to be doing weddings anymore. I have severe carpal tunnel from a previous work injury that moved her into flowers and whatever. Anyway, so it flared up again and she couldn't work. And she said, no worries, I'm selling it to someone in San Diego." And I turned to the owner and I said, "I'm never going to work with them. We don't work in San Diego that much." Like, it was just kind of a bummer. And she primarily did weddings and events. And I just got this wild idea to put an offer in, and just so happened all the buyers dropped off. And it was just this weird serendipitous moment of I think I'll buy it off of you because you're already a preferred vendor and it's a great business opportunity for me to grow, this collective brand. And within a couple weeks we were in escrow. So
Wow.
I bought it. I think I was 26 or something like that. And yeah, I did weddings just exclusively, and corporate events exclusively for the last, I guess 5 years at this point. And then 2 years ago, I just kind of kept getting people to ask me, can you do a birthday arrangement? Can you do a one-off thing? And as florists know, it's really tricky to do that and make a profit because
Right.
you have to purchase bundles of things. You can't just stem count. So I just started tinkering around with the idea of what would it look like to be a delivery service, and what's the model for that, and what's the profit margins for that. And yeah, I spent literally a year in my garage researching, designing the boxes, building the website, getting the right team behind me, and launched it last May of 2019. And I was doing that and weddings exclusively by myself with freelance help. I was about to lose my mind.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, so we launched, and then we got named by Forbes as one of the best flower delivery service in the US. And that was huge. And so
wow, that had to make you feel good.
yeah, it was a dream check off the list for sure. It was wild. Yeah, and so it just sort of organically started to grow. And then I had known Chloe for 5 years, or so, just through friends and
being in the Long Beach community, but we've never really spent a lot of time connected together. We knew who each other were.
Yeah. So I was struggling for help, pulling off of weddings after weddings and orders and everything. And I remembered that she had been in the event space. And so I called her up, and she freelanced, and I was like, "So do you want a job? Do you want to apply for this job?" And she, I don't know, it was just
I was like, "Yeah, send me the job description." And
yeah,
an interview later in a year, that was a year ago. And here I am.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a really fun ride so far, and learning a lot. And yes, I'm still relatively new to the floral industry. Maybe about 2 years or so now. I'm originally from Australia, immigrated to America about 4 years ago when I married my American husband. And I grew up on a farm out in rural Australia, and my mum had over 80 different varieties of roses in her garden. We had like a half-acre yard, and it was just like roses everywhere. I think she had like 120 actual plants. So I had like, and the really fragrant garden rose variety. So I had that gardening back, like, you know, I love gardening and getting my hands dirty. And so that was there. And then moved to Los Angeles, which has like half of my country's population. Not even kidding. In one city. It was a little overwhelming, but then kind of found myself in the event space, initially bartending actually, and then which is really fun. And then got connected to a couple of different florists and started freelancing, and was like, oh, this is really fun and I really enjoy this. And yeah, through that kind of connection, ended up landing the job with Carly and Primary Petals. And yeah, it's been really, really fun. It's a dream job. It really is.
So just to be clear, you guys are based in the, excuse me, you guys are based in the LA area.
Yes.
And so do you work out of like a brick and mortar space, or is it, you know, do you have a studio somewhere? How does that work?
Yeah, so people, you know, we built a really amazing brand. We still office out of the garage and my third bedroom.
That's amazing. That's, you know, it's great for overhead, right?
Yeah, we're in COVID, so we're trying to be as lean as possible, and we have space, and yeah, we're still a baby company, and we have big dreams and big plans, and so we're not gonna roll the dice and get in over our head on things.
Sure.
Yeah, we definitely dream about moving into those larger spaces in some point, and but yeah, right now we're taking some advice from Apple and starting in the garage.
There you go. I love that. Well, you know, the thing about it is when we get on the other side of COVID, I'm sure there's going to be some less expensive options out there if you are ready to make that jump at that time. And so I totally understand, and that's all good. So with going back to your backgrounds, do you, Chloe, so I understand the gardening background. Of course, you know, that's something I always love. I love, you know, that whole aspect of it. So you began by jumping in freelancing? Is that how you began your journey, so to speak, into florals?
Yeah.
And then just kind of got to learn from other businesses, other people, and they trained you how they love things to be done?
Yeah, so I had assisted a friend in doing some flowers for her wedding, and that kind of was one of the first things that I did. And she handed me a picture, and it was her arch, and it was on the family property, and she had a specific look, and she's like, can you replicate this? And I was like, I will do my best. And it turned out really, really well. And I was like, oh, this is really fun. And and then made a connection to a florist in Newport, where I was working on some charter yachts at the time. And she had been in the industry for 45 years. She recently sold her shop, and she was willing to kind of take me in and taught me a lot of things. There was definitely the first, I think, little bit that I worked with her. It was sweeping the floor and stripping leaves and emptying and refilling buckets and restocking the fridge, and kind of learning from there. And I'm like, oh, what's this called? And what's this called? And what's this called? And what's this called again? Because I forgot. And and then would do deliveries with her because she did weddings locally. So I'd go and do the drop-offs. And then slowly she started giving me more and more responsibility and, setting up for different things, and started doing centerpieces. And she has a different look than what I'm currently doing. But then I would just go to the flower market and pick up some stuff, or go to a local grocery store and pick up some stuff and play with it, and started making arrangements for family and friends, and did a couple things for my local church. And people were complimenting me on it, saying like, oh, you have a knack for this. And I was like, it's really fun if I can continue pursuing it and continue growing and learning. And that's probably one of the things I love about the industry that I'm in now is that there is still so much for me to learn and grow in, and that is really exciting.
I love that. And it's amazing. I think back to when I was young and you're in school and you're growing up, and how learning sometimes was such a tedious task to learn these subjects and things that you weren't interested in. But of course, once you get to being an adult and you find something that you're really passionate about, it's amazing how quick you can pick certain things up, especially when you're really interested and passionate about it. And whether it's flower names or techniques or things like that. And I think especially when you're excited and you have that desire to want to just learn, and you're that sponge that wants to soak it all up. I think that's great. And so now you guys are the dynamic duo of Primary Petals, and that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about Primary Petals. What I know you've mentioned weddings. I know you with the Forbes mention you ship things. So tell us kind of more detail, like what you guys do and how things are structured.
Do you want me to do it? Go for it. Okay. We'll make the charge. I'll pipe in.
Yeah. So we work on events still. That's sort of our bread and butter at this time. So we do wedding floral orders, private events, corporate, of course, when they are happening.
Right.
So so across the board, baby showers and all the rest. So we do all of that. But we have a retail side of our brand, and that ships boxes that are already pre-designed bouquets with a little card, and then if you order a little add-on, there's bath bomb you can order and like little treats, and essentially we say we ship joy to your porch and ship nationwide. So that's what we do, and so we have the both and, which is so if you're not doing a wedding but that your mother-in-law has a birthday and you want to impress her, you can send flowers from us.
Yeah. And then we handcraft everything and put it together in the box, and we have an online store where you can make purchases for those orders. So that's done all through e-commerce, which is really nice and fun, and I enjoy that aspect of it too.
That's cool. Well, I know earlier you mentioned, and this is one of the struggles I think a lot of people who juggle events and retail, is the whole bunch and stem count thing, because you can't buy flowers usually in a manner that makes it economical for shipping. So do you guys have this system where you are customizing out of an inventory, or do you go and buy per like once you get a few orders? I mean, I don't know. How do you plan that? How do you kind of structure that? Because I feel like that's some of the pain points of doing business this way.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we've been working out. Like Harley said, she only launched our direct service a year ago, so we're still in some process of figuring out how to do that well. And as our orders are growing in a week, so sometimes we'll get 5 orders in a week, which is great because we can go through all of the inventory that we have, and then other weeks we'll only get 1 order. We design, so I do most of the product design for Primary Petals Direct. So I'll go, and we actually use a really great program called Details Flowers, which I love.
Cool.
Initially got hold of them. I can't remember how we initially saw them, but we saw them and we're like, oh, this would be great for our proposals and weddings. This was pre-COVID. And then I started exploring and getting to know the program more, and I actually use it to do our recipes as well for our the products that we ship for our bouquets. So it's a great way for me to break down stem count and prices and get something that fits in the right price bracket that we want, and it hits all the points that we need as a business, and also meets a price point that our customers that they're happy with. And then we will use those recipes to make everything. So what I try to do is we have our 3 kind of hero products, I guess, to describe them. We have our currently called our quarantine bouquet, which we launched at the beginning of COVID as a way to say like, hey, you can connect with people. And yeah, we did a silly little video, which was really fun, of dropping off some of these quarantine bouquets on friends' doorsteps around the Long Beach area. And then we have.
Was that, wait, I want to interrupt. Is that the one that was like deliver flowers, not germs, or something like
Yes.
that?
Spread joy, not germs.
Spread joy, not germs. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was something.
Yeah. That was a really fun moment, particularly when we were like, we don't know what the world is doing right now. Like, everybody was panic buying toilet paper at Costco at this point. So we were like, let's go drop some flowers off, because that's something we can do.
Oh, that was catchy.
We ran around doing that. Yeah, that really is, I think, the heart behind Direct, is just making people smile with the box. And we always, like, we as a brand are like, we use bright colors. We use bright colors and fun, kind of quirky flowers that are a little like different, but we've also had to do a bit of research into making sure we have flowers that are going to travel well too. So that helps shape what kind of arrangements we end up shipping, because we want to make sure, like, we can't ship dahlias. Like, we love them, but
Yeah.
they're just not going to arrive on your doorstep looking good. So we can't do those, but we love, yeah, most of our arrangements will have ranunculus, and we love using pin cushions and banksia and some of the like more dried elements, and we use lemon leaf and leather are probably our two favorite greeneries, but then every now and then we'll play with something else. And yeah, so we have like a base kind of recipe that we're using, so that way, depending on whatever order we get, we have, yeah, like a base product that we're pulling from. So we're not buying one unique thing over here for this arrangement and then one unique bundle of flowers for this arrangement. We're buying something that we can interchange between multiple orders, but still have a different look. And then we do have some of our like more custom looking ones, which, yeah, to be honest, there are some weeks where we end up with leftover product in the fridge, and then there are weeks where we have to go to the flower market a couple of times to fulfill orders. But we also try and make sure that the order arrives the freshest that it can. So yeah, that means a few drives south to our wholesaler and back again, which generally involves a quick stop at Starbucks.
I love that. I totally love that. Well, and I'm really kind of, I love the fact that you use details for that, because I think a lot of times people think of it for strictly wedding proposals, events, you know, your inventory management, things like that, but costing out your recipes for retail, I think it just shows the versatility of the product, and I'm glad to hear that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and then one of our favorite parts of that is like, I can make up the recipe in details, and then we literally just print off the recipe PDFs that they have, and they just live in the studio space. And then if neither of us have a moment of going, oh, what do we have to put in this again? We can then just grab a piece of paper and like we have them laminated in the studio, so that we just like, they're used regularly. And I really, really appreciate the smoothness and the ease that adds to us when we're trying to like fulfill multiple orders.
Yeah, it's kind of like having a recipe card, really, when you're cooking.
It is.
Almost.
It literally is a recipe card.
Yeah, I love that. Totally love that. And so I know everyone's had to pivot. And so I guess you guys picked the perfect time to start shipping nationwide for orders like this, because you had all the kinks out of the system, right? Before it hit.
Did you know something that we didn't know, Carly, when you watched this?
Yeah, Fauci.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it was a very, very lucky thing, I'll say. But yeah, we did have a lot of the kinks. I mean, the only issue that we've had at all during COVID for the Direct was UPS wasn't backing their guarantee when everything was going on, like initially. Oh. And so we ship overnight. There's no way we ship 2-day, like no way. And so, yeah, we had we had a couple issues in the very beginning where it was like taking, it was like delayed, and then it's like, well, we don't ship on
Right.
Saturday or Sunday, so now it's Monday, so it's like we're sending you a new box.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen for very long.
Yeah,
and it was only
short.
like maybe 3 boxes of an issue out of all of the orders that we had this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, other than that, it's pretty seamless. Our partners at UPS are great. They yeah, we have kind of a system down, and it's really hasn't had too many problems at all. And initially when I started, of course it was like people I didn't know buying the product, but it was a lot of people I knew. And so, I would ask everyone that I knew, that whoever they're sending it to, if they could just do a quick video unbox, just so I could see it. And so, we sent to South Carolina and New York and Florida and Chicago and all these places over east. And then, of course, I have a lot of connections on the West Coast. And so I'd watch it and I'd go, okay, well that, I'm like super like, that rose has a little bruise. And, you just kind of looking at all of the details and stuff of it. But other than, I don't think we had any arrived dye or like look like bad, because it was just such a quick flight. It was like,
yeah,
they're there.
Yeah.
So.
And they're sent with like a water source and all wrapped up and bundled and secured in the box, so they're not like rattling around in there or whatever. And our box is like not super deep, so they kind of more spread out than like squished upright, I guess. So I think everything seems to travel pretty well.
But in terms of pivoting during COVID, I think we've really sort of fine-tuned that like the direct service is where we want to put our energy. And just, it's been cool to see the community come around us that, are like, oh, well, I can't see my mom, so I'm going to send her something, and I know that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we launched the quarantine bouquet as sort of like, this is our product that is affordable, and it like says enough to be like, I miss you, I wish you well, but I don't have to like get near you.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna deliver something.
Yeah. Straight to my not Germs.
Yeah. So that's kind of been our pivot. And it sort of just rolled out from there. And yeah, we're still selling all kinds of products on our site still. So
yeah, and most of the weddings that we had booked for this year have been rescheduled for next year. And then there's been some that have been like pushed back and then pushed back and then
a micro wedding instead.
So we've had some clients where they're like, okay, well, we're going to do a big party next year when we can, or when things settle, and we're just going to do a small gathering with family. And we recently did one of those, and it was really fun. We got to actually be really creative with flowers too, because it was a more intimate gathering. So we did this big beautiful tablescape, and we did like colored wax pillar candles, and it was really fun to have a moment to kind of like things to feel a little normal again. And like to get back into that space and play with some of the flowers that we don't play with when we're doing direct service too. So that was really fun.
Yeah, I guess so. And I feel like doing the micro weddings, I don't know, I feel like sometimes, I don't know, you tell me, are customers being more open to just having fun with it, or are they still kind of trying to stick with a particular theme? Are they open to suggestions? What's been your experience as you plan a micro wedding?
Yeah, I mean, everybody is like, wow, there's perspective. I mean, I work with brides all the time, and there's the level of anxiety. It's got to be this way. It's my biggest day of my life. All of these things. And I think COVID has really put people into perspective of like, what is important, my health, my family, like the people are, that kind of thing. And so we have really had fun with like, brides just being like, listen, couldn't, it couldn't be worse than the situation we're finding ourselves in. So let's just like do something really pretty and like, I trust you. Was the last, what did our last bride say? Go with your heart.
Yeah. She's like, whatever you want to do. She's like, this is kind of what I'm thinking, but like literally just like whatever you want to do, which like that one we pulled off
in like a week.
Yeah, in pretty short notice. Yeah, called her wholesaler and said, can you get me these things? And she said, I'm on it. And then
quick ordered vases.
Yeah, quick ordered vases. And the candles came in, and yeah, we pulled it off, which too, like we did, so it was a table for 12. So we only had like 3 large centerpieces, which when we're doing production for a bigger wedding, you know, there could be like 20 centerpieces that we have to make. And so it's a bit of a hustle to like, you know, get them done and in the fridge, and, you know, because we've got all these other things we have to do. Whereas it was also nice for us to have like, you know, we had music on in the studio and we were just like enjoying making the arrangements, which was really fun. I think we like FaceTimed my mom when we were doing it, which was fun too.
Yeah, there's a little level of like casuality. Is that a word?
It could
today it is. So there you go.
Yeah.
I love that. So do you guys normally use freelancers, or do you, when you're doing weddings and things, or do you guys tackle it all mostly yourselves?
Depending on the size, but we do have a team of freelancers that we regularly call to help out with larger scale events, whatever that looks like. And yeah, even we had one micro wedding that came up that I wasn't actually available to set up for. So one of our guys came in and did that. And yeah, they're great. We love them and they appreciate the work. And then if they've got events and need extra hands, then we'll go help them out, which has been really nice that there's some community there too, and not necessarily like, well, no, because we're in competition with each other. But between a couple, like between the 3 or 4 of us that generally work together, we all have different styles too. And like, I get to learn from them when I'm doing something for their event. And then I hope and feel like they probably learn stuff when they're doing things with us. And, oh, that's cool. I've never done it that way. Or, yeah, we did a wedding in San Ynez in August on the Central Coast, so a couple hours away from us. And Carly had some connections to planners up there who had some floral freelancers, because some of our regular crew weren't available. So then we had some local gals come in and do that, which was really fun to make more connections. And
sure.
Yeah, so we definitely appreciate freelancers and what they bring to the table, as well as like the service that they're providing for us when we need it. So yeah.
You know, one of the things I think is so interesting, going back to and I just thought of this, you know, people that have a retail business doing weddings and things, the idea of shipping, you know, obviously you've managed to get all the kinks worked out, but I feel like one of the advantages that you two have is being in the LA area with all these flower growers that, you know, come. It's sort of like a mecca almost of people bringing product in, and the price points are really different because there's not the shipping and there's not all those added box charges and things like that, you know, kind of drive the cost of flowers up when they're traveling east. And so I feel like you guys really are in a great place at a great time. I mean, do you think that's possible for other people to try to do this, or is it just really one of those challenges that you know, you're just, like I said, in the right place?
I think, well, the thing that I think that sets us apart is I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I think a lot of times people, it's not for me, it's not necessarily about like, you know, can other people do it? I think it's like, do you have the heart behind building a business model that can sustain it? And a lot of, you know, florists don't, and I'm generally speaking, a lot of creatives are creatives. And so they don't think about that sort of thing. And so, is it possible? Of course. I think, I just don't know how many people actually would be like down with like the geeky parts of it. I don't know.
Yeah, like I nerd out on creating products that hit a design that I'm trying to create and fit a price point with our customer. And like, I think too, like we've been doing a lot of research recently into like, who is our customer and what do they want and how do we provide that for them? And I think if you're willing to spend the time to do that research and figure that out, then you can take whatever resources are at your fingertips and turn it into a product for a consumer that is near you. But you have to keep the end consumer in mind. And that doesn't always look like, you know, that's not always the design that I wish I could make, because I can't ship butterfly ranunculus, even though I love them. So we, it's like taking what you have and making it work for what you're trying to sell to your customer.
I think the other thing too is like, as a wedding flower company or private events, doing weddings, there is a sense, there's a different way to build it, the company.
Right.
Like, you're like doing this creative thing and then someone sees it and they ask you to do it and you just sort of like snowball into like having clients, and it's different every year, and like you're just kind of like, honestly, you just kind of go with it. You're just like, you don't have to think too hard about it. You don't really have, like, it just sort of happens. Whereas Primary Petals Direct is a science, like, and that's, I think, where people like get like, they're like, no, like, this is a business. There's actually like a plan, and like, who are customer, and like, what is SEO? I have no idea. You know what I mean? And like studying all those things and A/B testing, and like, it's a lot of like business. Yeah. So the shipment of it is like the last thing. Like, that's the fun part, but like, that's the last thing that we do, because all of these things have to like, you know, hit a certain point, and then it rolls into like actually a sale, so that it's a totally different model and funnel and all of that.
Well, e-commerce, I think e-commerce too doesn't push the buttons for the average creative designer that you know, that doing the weddings and having, you know, the creative process and pulling color palettes and designing, you know, environments, and you know, like, that pushes a lot of buttons for most people in our industry. You know, having to geek out on SEO and figuring out, you know, the box size that's optimal, and figuring out the recipes that are gonna not just look pretty but then arrive alive. It's you know, all those things. Yeah, I can see where that's not very exciting for the average person.
And the other thing too is like, when you're doing, I think creatives love just like sitting down and like dreaming with the bride, and it's this like thing.
Yeah, that's me.
I love that. I like that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, cool. Like, I'm more like brained in like, okay, let's like get this to the finish line. Whereas like in direct service and mailing, we're interacting minimally with both parties. So the sender and the receiver. So it's very like, you know, there's some people that order one time and they, you know, that was it. And it's like, we don't hear anything, like whatever.
There's no feedback, there's no gushing response. It was the best day of my life, and I loved the flowers, and like, sometimes we don't hear anything. Yeah. You're like, did it arrive okay? Like, did you like them? Like, and
I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not like I hope it doesn't come across like I don't like people. I love people, but it's, you know, it's a totally different thing. It's like, at 5:30 is our drop dead cutoff to get this stuff to UPS, because the truck for our air cargo leaves. And so it's like, you know, the first time I did it, I took the boxes in and I put it there, and they're like, okay. And I just left, and I'm like, I'm done. Like, with weddings, it's this like weeks of like follow up and this and that, and you know, all that.
Yeah, and like stuff. The strike that you have to go back for, and then cleaning the studio and putting everything away and like resetting for the next time. Where it's like,
I'm like, I can go to dinner with like people.
Yeah,
I can have a life.
Definitely. It's definitely different, and it's nice that we work in both still. I really enjoy that, still being kind of newer in the industry too, and getting to like sink my teeth into the weddings aspect of it, and then nerding out on the direct stuff. And like, I loved science as a kid anyway, and so sitting in, and it's just a puzzle to solve. Like, that's kind of how we view it. And like, even yesterday we're having conversations about, okay, how do we solve this puzzle that we're trying to work on currently in like this area? And that I think is one of the driving forces for us specifically. That is, I'm not sure how much that resonates with others in the industry, or whether that's kind of more on the like entrepreneurial side that we kind of find ourselves on as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I could totally see the average person in the floral industry. You've worked hard and you get that box to UPS, and then that's like it. It's like there's no bride crying. They're so happy. It's so beautiful. It's not, you don't have you're not getting that emotional response, that connectivity with shipping a box of flowers out. But at the same time, as that little business continues to grow and you have successes, I mean, that will come, I'm sure, at some point. And I know it probably has in some little ways now, but it's like, it's an impressive undertaking. And it's really kind of cool to hear just how you guys have worked together to kind of push forward through all of this. And again, what a perfect time, because everyone is needing, needing some joy in their lives, right? Some flowers. And it's a great way to kind of do that. Do you, I know you mentioned dahlias as being a difficult flower to ship, which of course none of us are shocked by that, I don't think. Do you find it difficult to find that mix that keeps things interesting for you, but yet is something that arrives still intact? Or have you kind of doing it long enough where you kind of know?
Like there's two things that we had to look at, because I think the bouquets that I started with then shifted with us when we really I have had kind of idea of like, okay, this is how much we can spend max per bouquet. And then when Chloe came on, we went in details, and we were like, really fine-tuned it. So there was like a few tweaks, but it was a lot of the same stuff. But yeah, there's two things. It's like, can this thing ship? And is it in the price point? Mm-hmm. And is it, I guess three, is it like weird and cool and unique enough to like set us apart? Right. So there's three things going on. So it's a pretty, there's some good options. Like we have subs for things, but yeah, it's all the same thing that we ship. Like, I don't think there's like a new variety that we're like, let's do this, because all the new stuff that's like popping up tends to be like pricey, so we can't use it. Yeah. So I feel like we can go into the market and be like, okay, I know if I can't use renons, I can use the tulips because those are closed and those will ship super great, whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah. So we sort of have like,
Yeah. Once we narrowed down to figure out like some more of our margins to make sure that like we're actually remaining profitable too, because that's, a key thing in being in business. The design is part of it, but making sure that we are making money to go back into the business. And that takes a little bit of finagling with your numbers and your stem count and working with your local florist, your local wholesaler, and like, because their prices will fluctuate too. And like being in LA, even when COVID first happened, the LA flower market had to close, which was the floral industry for all of our growers. But yeah, that was awful to like hear about, just, seasons of worth of work having to go away. And then I'm like coming from an agricultural background being like, it's the worst. Yeah. And but there was one wholesaler that actually stayed open because they were smaller, they're the smaller team, and so we've recently been partnering with them. Yeah. And they've been able to, they understand a little bit about our business model too and what we're looking for, because I think we're one of the only customers that does what we do, and a lot of it is wedding and like more brick and mortar shops in the area, and they have been really helpful about like, oh, okay, you guys getting these in again, or like, where are we at on the supply chain, like where are you guys at with your growers, can we expect to get these things? So we have, now that we have some solid base recipes that we're using, we know what we can sub in and out. Yeah. One, to create variety in the design for us, but two, when people are buying a product online, they want what they see. So there is some element of like, well, we need to provide, like, we can't just change our mind all of a sudden and be like, oh, we just want to put this in instead because it's cute and pretty and it ships well. But they're like, well, that's not what I was expecting. And so we have like our three, like I was saying, like our quarantine, our original bundle of joy, and our big bundle of joy. They have a little more like seasonal flexibility, whereas some of our other ones have, like our all white wonder, I think is more like, it has to be white blooms and it has a bit more of a different look. But we do kind of have the caveat of like, well, if we can't find exactly that, we will provide you with something that looks similar. Yeah, so there is that adjustment when like things shift in season or all of a sudden are not available anymore. But we're still able to kind of create the look that we're going for, and that comes, I think, with communicating with our wholesaler well. And they're awesome. We love them.
That's great. Well, I feel like, out of curiosity, so do you have to go back and, you know, like if somebody orders a specific bouquet, or obviously that's what you have to do online, if there's, is there a clause in there that says you sub things if they're not available, or if it's more peony centered and the peonies don't look good, do you have to reach back out to them and say, hey, we're going to make the substitution. Are you okay with that? Or do you just have the clauses already built in so you don't have to go back and forth?
Yeah, when I was building the model, I had like an army of like contractual lawyers like surrounding the project, and I was like, listen, how do I protect from this? You have any ideas? So yeah, upon ordering, you sign kind of the terms and agreement, and it does have that. It's like, you know, if we can't sub this, or if your bouquet arrives dead, here's the thing, like that kind of stuff. So, but there is, I don't think we've ever had to really like call anybody. I think have we?
We've followed up with people like that have, like, we did have a kink where people weren't putting in their delivery date properly, like that wasn't working. So there were some customers that we followed and be like, okay, we just want to confirm which shipping date, or like sometimes people would put the billing and the shipping address with like exact same, or like we were like, is that actually where you wanted to send the bouquet?
So that's when we checked.
So we've kind of done a couple checks on those aspects, which people seem to appreciate. That we're willing to reach out, and they're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, like, who's calling me, sorry? And I'm like, we just placed an order with us, and they're like, oh wow. So I haven't seen a detriment to having those like small follow-ups with people, and literally it's like a 2-minute conversation or a quick email. Yeah,
but I think we choose flowers that are available
as much as possible.
Like they're always at the market. They're kind of the like, you know,
Staples.
the regulars. So we haven't had anything where it's like, oh, they don't have white renunks. It's like, okay, well, we know our sub, we know that the customer had, like, it doesn't veer off too much.
Yeah, and then we try and provide, like, every time we kind of make an arrangement of that of that product, we put a picture on the website. So if you look under a product, it may have like two slightly, like a little bit of a different look. So that way we were trying to communicate to the customer that like, okay, like you're going to get something that looks in this range,
right?
All very similar.
Yeah.
But that way they are not surprised, because like we said, we don't have that connection where we sit down with the bride and have coffee and talk through the design. So being as informative without overwhelming in the e-commerce space is something that we've been like,
has been a dance.
Yeah, has been a bit of a dance as we're learning how to like make sure people understand what they're purchasing, and that, you know, they're like, yeah, if something goes wrong, how to contact us, and making sure that stuff's available. And you kind of, honestly, sometimes we feel like we're repeating ourselves over and over and over again. Like, yeah, I think the biggest question we get is like, oh, you guys ship anywhere? And we're like, yes, we ship nationwide. Like, literally anywhere you want to go, we can go. Like, we recently,
where do you want to go?
Yeah, where do you want your flowers to go? We'll get them there. Like, yeah, we recently sent stuff to Alaska. So,
which is awesome, because none of our lovely, I guess, competitors ship there.
Yeah.
So we're like,
Kelly was like,
we're two people out of a garage
and we're doing this.
So if you have friends in Anchorage,
there you go.
Or Eagle River.
Flowers. Or Eagle River.
That's what we sent them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think that's really incredible. And what an undertaking. I just think it's I don't know. I just feel like you guys are the perfect people to tackle this. And I love your attitude. I love your energy. I think it's just really awesome. I know there's had to have been, so now I'm going to put you on the spot here now that I've buttered you up. So now there's had to have been some points where like working together, it's, is there ever that time where you guys are ready to like pull each other's hair out? Are you at each other's throats? Do you guys always get along perfectly, or because you guys just seem like you have just the perfect chemistry to be working together?
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. I think we look at each other and like,
She goes, when are we gonna have our first like? When are we gonna start arguing?
Yeah,
And I'm
like where is the limit that we're done with each other? Like we'll get tired, and I think we're both kind of adult enough to recognize like, okay, I need my own space
We
now.
both go to therapy.
Yeah. we're practicing being healthy adult humans who function well and
Self-medicate.
yeah. Busy Plumes, you've seen it.
Yeah. We have hard conversations.
Yeah.
A lot of times. Like,
yeah.
Because I'm more in the like, are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yes.
I'm a 3. So I'm 4 and she's a 4. So she's led by feelings and I'm led by achievement. So I'm like, okay, I'm taking the ball down the field, and you're like, oh, look at this daisy. And I'm like, go! So it's like there's that, but again, I don't think it's this like we can laugh about it because it's like we both know that, and so there's like grace back and forth.
Yeah.
And obviously in business, like you have to have really hard conversations, and it's not all peachy at all. There's moments where you're like, this is so hard, and you're in the grind, and like, from a business, vision, and then down to what's really going on. There's a lot of things that are different or change.
Yeah, which I think like the diversity in the job helps me in general, because I can go kind of all over the place. But two, I think because our friendship was formed out of business, like we weren't really friends before we started doing this thing together.
That's a good point.
So, yeah, so we knew each other, but it was really like that first day when I was freelancing with Carly, and she's like, so what are you like dreaming about doing? Or like kind of we got talking about more that entrepreneurial connection, and I'm like, I have all these business ideas that I want to pursue one day. But like I love being in this floral space of learning about this industry, and like, I already had that background with the bartending and hospitality and working in events, and was like, oh, this whole industry is so fascinating to me, and flowers is a part of that. We kind of connected over that mutual ground. So because I think that's probably unique too, in that like we're driven both by a business desire, and like flowers is more the industry we're in, and so that is kind of the connection to be like, okay, when things are hard, this is the area we want to succeed in, so we can push through the difficult conversations, or the like, okay, well, how are we going to navigate doing this? And that kind of comes back to that like puzzle solving that we both really enjoy. And then too, I think like we take time to have our own space, and then also like we do fun stuff together. Like we realize we have a lot in common. Like we both love cooking, so we'll kind of make sure that like we stop and have like a really decent lunch break, and like we'll make food and sit and kind of like chill out and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as much as we're taking care of the business too.
That's a great point, because I think so many times, I know I'm guilty of that, and not just taking that time to unplug and to, do the self-care, whether it's mentally kind of decompressing, or physically dealing with stress and things that, deadlines and things like that. Because I can imagine that you guys, you have boxes to get out, and you're sitting in LA traffic, and you're stuck, and you can't get back, and you got the flowers, and it's 100 degrees outside, and it's like there's some real challenges that cause real stress. And then working through that too, I think is a challenge. So I'm glad to hear that, because I feel like so many times those are the pieces that people forget about. They put themselves on the back burner, and they don't really address that.
Yeah, and I think like you can't bring yourself fully to the table if you're not like aware of what's happening in your own life or your own needs. Like like we said, we both are like, self-care is like one of the things that we value and really encourage, and is part of the like desire behind flowers too, is buy yourself flowers. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the other thing that I'm really passionate about, and having done businesses for 10 years and just kind of seen the like health, unhealth, you know what I mean? Like just what to do, what not to do. I think in talking with Chloe initially, it was like, this really matters to me, that like you can come to me with an issue and we can have honest conversations, and we're each taking a day off every week, and we're eating well. And like, I look at building businesses like it's a sport. And so I need to be my most sharpest when I'm, eating well, I'm exercising, I'm sleeping well, like I have good, healthy people around me. And so I try to eliminate as much stress as possible in knowing that like if I want to succeed on a high level, like I have to show up to the table in the same way. And I would say the other thing too is like there's so many cool businesses that I love, and then when I meet somebody that worked for them, it's this sort of like, wow, it was a really toxic work environment, and the owner is just like a jerk and all of these things. And it was like, okay, well, what do I not want to be as like a boss? And so, if I spin out or have a hard conversation or I'm stressed, I like do my best to come clear. I'm like, it's not you. It's just like really hard. And I try to show up as vulnerable as possible.
Yeah. And then like we make space for each other too in those moments.
So yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about like healthy culture and like when we build a team and stuff, and we just like, we really want people to like love their job because we love it.
Yeah.
So.
I love that. And I think that sincerity comes through when you are approaching issues, and you've got, just being able to say, listen, it's not you. It's just, I'm having a tough time right now. And it's okay. It's okay to say that. I mean, it's like, why not? I mean, you don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah. And I also look at like being like a leader and a boss as someone who serves, because I think a lot of times it's like, I'm the boss, and so I have all this power, and I'm like walking around.
Do your things, minions.
Yeah, which is like a joke if you say that, but like I'm like just kidding. Like let me sweep the floor too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Minions,
and being the boss who serves.
Oh yeah, so like I just look at being a leader as like, okay, how do I come under you guys, because like you guys are the ones that are going to be like the doing the orders and like shipping all of that.
Yeah.
So I just look at it as a support and all that. So
yeah, I love that. That's really great. I always like to kind of wind down our episode by asking for advice. And I mean, you guys just dropped some great points there, but I'm wondering if there was ever, and since we have two of you, we get like buy one get one free here.
Love a good bargain.
So I always like to ask, it can be advice that someone's given you that really meant a lot, or a piece of advice you'd love to share with other people that you feel like people need to hear.
You go first. I haven't figured mine out yet.
I've heard it a lot. I read a ton of business books, Billy does too. But one of the things that has really, really helped Primary Petals succeed has been listening to your audience. You got to listen to your customer, because otherwise you don't have a business. If I didn't say this in the beginning, but I originally wanted to do a subscription box, and that just didn't go well. People, like, I sold like 2. And I was like, okay, this isn't sustainable at all.
Right.
Okay, what do people want? Like, they have a birthday, they have a funeral, they have a, whatever. So how do I pivot that? And so it was just being able to be a student of the people that are buying from you, and listening to them and following what they want to buy, because like they're the little micro investor of your business. They're your customer, the person that's like keeping the lights on. And so if you're just like, well, I know better than you, that's never going to go well. You won't have any capital behind you at all. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have tried to implement over the last 2 years as I've like built this company. So
let me try to dig something out of that, because I think that's really important too. I feel like a lot of times people feel like they're supposed to have all the answers, even though they may know they don't have all the answers. And they may know that I really need to plug into what my audience or my customers want, but they're either feel embarrassed to ask the questions, or how do you ask the questions and not I don't know, and stay true to your brand? Because, you know, what if somebody says, oh, I think you should be shipping cactus plants, and you're like, well, that's not what I want to do at all, you know what I mean? And it's like, how do you feel like, how do you get that information in a professional way that still helps, you know, you're able to kind of maintain your brand?
Okay, well, I will share a conversation I had yesterday. I
Okay.
come from a family of entrepreneurs. My sister works in the cargo shipping space in Alaska, Seattle, Hawaii. And I was asking her about some ideas and stuff. And she reiterated that, like, listen to your audience. But she kind of gave me a visual of like, you cast this wide net. You do all the things, you know, that you want to do as a brand. So it's like, we're doing weddings, we're doing, you know, we're doing this style, you know, you kind of just do all the things that you're passionate about. And it's like, start there, like actually just start doing it. And then once you start getting customers, because you will, then you can whittle those things down of like, oh, I'm noticing a trend here. I'm noticing that like this person is, you know, this type of person is ordering this color palette. So then there's a trend.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to post a ton more things about that because that's what people want. So you don't necessarily have to like go dig and ask, you know, your cousin who thinks they know it all. Like, that's not what I'm saying, but it's like watching what sells and then capitalizing on those things.
Yeah, there's definitely a trial and error. Like Carly was mentioning, like A/B testing, where we'll post things online and see which two images get the most response, which is telling us that the people who are following us on Instagram like these pictures better, which hopefully would indicate to us that that's more the product that they're going to buy. So there's definitely like, and that's kind of like,
that's the science.
Yeah, that's the nitty gritty stuff that we're in now, of like really figuring out who our customer is and what they want. And it's, and there is like surveys, and like literally like we've called some people and asked them like, could we do better, or like what would you like? And
we know, like, you know, 1 second. We know that, you know, this person buys from us a lot. So like, you know, we can give them a ring or whatever.
Oh, sure, because you've got that relationship, right?
Yeah. And like just looking at some of the information that like Shopify is our e-commerce site that we use, so it will pull analytics. So it's sitting and looking at that, but like we didn't know anything about analytics a little while ago. So like then we're Googling like how to read analytics. And
I'm like, I found this podcast on analytics, you know.
Yeah, like, and then I'm like, I found this YouTube video, like throw that over there. So technology and like every florist has made everything a lot easier in terms of accessing information, where it's like, we don't have to be the expert on that because someone else already is, and we can, you know, a lot of that information's out there. It's just sitting and going through it.
Every florist that's listening right now is like, I'm done, pause.
They're like, I got what I needed.
Talia's don't ship.
It's all Google. It's all Google.
Yeah.
So I love that. Okay, Chloe. So I can't wait to hear your advice.
I'm like pulling mental blanks, but I think my encouragement would be to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. I think that's it. Like, and I've always been the adventurer. Like my first international trip, I was 16. Like you want to go on an adventure, let's get in the car and we'll go. And, yeah, I moved halfway across the planet, and there have been things that are really uncomfortable, but there are really good things on the other side of that. And yeah, it's totally worth pushing into like the anxieties that you feel, the fears that you feel, the like, I don't know what I'm doing. But because the truth is, no one knows what they're doing. Like, we're all just trying to figure this thing out called life. And I think pushing into that and like learning to be okay when you're uncomfortable is a really big thing. And I'm still learning it. Like, I'm totally still in that space, but like, that's something that I'm pushing into, because I know that that's where the growth is going to be. That's where the new connection, like when you're a little kid on the playground and your mom's like, go say hi to people, and you're like, yeah, thanks mom, and it's like, well, hi, I'm Chloe, and then they're like, they ignore you or whatever, but it's like, okay, well, I'll try again. And yeah, I guess kind of, yeah, just being okay with being uncomfortable and having to learn things and ask questions. And if someone's a jerk, write them off and go find someone else who's nicer, because there are plenty of nice people out there who are willing to like share things with you and teach you stuff. And often people, I think, when you ask them questions about like, hey, how do you do this thing that you're good at, people go, I'm not good at it. And then there's some level of like a compliment there too in asking. And yeah, I think that would be fine. Push into the not fun stuff.
Well, I love that. And I appreciate you both for sharing that, because you know, if there's anything that as entrepreneurs and floral business owners, really, you know, you're always putting it out there. I mean, I've shared this story before, but I don't know that I fully appreciated how much as business owners you guys put yourselves out there every single week. Because when we launched this podcast almost 2.5 years ago, you know, and the first time I released, we launched, I think, like 3 episodes at first. And, you know, you do that and you see it show up. And of course you have no following really at that point. I mean, we had a little bit on social media, but it was like, and of course I had lots of flower friends because, you know, I've been in the industry forever. But still it's like this crickets, and you're like, okay, now I have to sit back and watch whether I'm accepted or rejected, or whether we get feedback. And even now I go back and listen to those first episodes, and it's kind of painful for me because I feel like we've come so far. And now that we're over 100 episodes, I think this is our 103rd episode. And so, yeah, it's crazy, but it's like, but yet it's like you put yourself out there and you don't know, and you're just afraid of that rejection, or you're afraid of being, you know, of no one liking what you've created to buy it. And it's kind of that little scary no man's land a little bit. Yeah. But you know what? But I love what both of you have said, because I think it's both true that, okay, fine, then you just tweak it, or you just find, you know, the thing that does work, or the thing that does resonate, kind of like whether it's the not nice person on the playground, or it's trying to listen to your audience to achieve the product mixture that really resonates with people. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for being on the Flower Podcast.
It was so fun.
It was so fun. It was so worth waking. It was so worth waking up this early.
Yeah.
So everybody, you know, they started like at 7 a.m. their time, and I'm just like, they are dedicated. I'm so impressed. And so no one would ever know that. Maybe if you're watching YouTube, you see my eyes not even open all the way, but you guys are raring to go. So I love it. Anyway, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us.